Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 179.
Well, in a conventional lesson, it's the teacher that asks the questions. They ask questions that they've previously researched the answers to, but that's not how it should be. It's the students that are learning, so they should be asking the questions.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Jim Baker. Jim is a 46 years seasoned maverick in the UK teaching industry. Jim is highly awarded for his excellence in teaching approach and the use of technology implementation. He has an online learning site with useful links to science and other subjects, mind mapping, teaching training, ELA, which is the English as an additional language, and general topics. He specializes in providing resources for teachers and students, maximizing student learning, and advising fellow teachers on what really works. He believes that learning will be your most valuable experience in life, so you need to make the most of it. Jim has also been a past contributor on The Luminous Mind with 2 past podcasts of episode 58 and 79. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Rebecca. It's lovely to be here again.
I'm so excited to speak with you again and learn more about some of the new things that you're doing these days. But before we get into any of that, would you please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, I'm 70 this year.
That's crazy.
I started teaching in 1970, so I've been at it for 46 years. I say teaching, I don't like the word teaching because that implies you stand there delivering information, and there's no need for that nowadays. The students can get that information. So I am still educating because I feel I've got a lot still to pass on. It seems wrong that I should not do that.
That's awesome. It's great that he gave us a context of, how old he is and all that stuff, because when we're listening to this stuff, you got to keep that in mind, that he has been learning how to use the resources to best, to be able to educate people in a better way than, what we're normally used to. He far exceeds even some young teachers. But, to get the best idea of Jim's learning approach, I recommend re-listening to some of those episodes so that, you can understand kind of how the flipped classroom works. But we're going to do a quick recap. Jim was one of the first teachers to use the flipped type of learning. Let's talk about what that means. What is the flipped learning and flipped classrooms?
Right. So conventionally, the teacher gives information to the students in class. This is not needed now because the students can get that information for themselves, and then the teachers set questions for the students to do at home, which they are not there to help them, but that is just when the teacher should be there helping them. Whereas on the flipped classroom, what the students normally do in class, i.e. assimilate information, they do that on their own, out of class. And the beauty of that is if they do not understand anything, they can replay the video or reread the notes until they do. And then in class, they do what they were given to do as homework. They actually do the questions in class, so the teacher is there to help them.
Yeah, that's a great recap for that whole method of flipped learning. Today we're going to talk about kind of how he's taken flipped learning to the next level of using cloud computing to help with that. Let's talk about that a little bit. How have you used the cloud to make this flipped classroom or flipped learning a lot more effective for students?
So on the flipped learning, that implies that the students have to have access to the information before the lesson. so they can read up on it. Now, if with using Google on the Google Drive, all I have to do is to give my students access to my documents on there. And the beauty of using Google is that the students do not need any specific programs on their device. All they need is any device that can access the internet, and they can then access the resources I give them.
Well, and the cool thing about that is that you're giving like videos and you're giving a ton of different information, like a huge, vast information, but all they need is a link, correct?
All they need is a link, so there isn't any problem of sending files that are too big. If I wanted to send a video, then it may be too big to email, but if they have the link to it, then there is no information clogging up their devices, and they just click on the link, as I actually demonstrated with you before this session. You just click on the link and it works fine.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the ways that he's kind of taken it. Even from taking it from a website, you've been able to create Google Drive, Google Docs, and tell us how you've done that with your links. Because he's got 46 years of teaching experience or material to share, correct?
Yes, so on the Google Drive, you have 15 gigabytes free storage, but anything that's created using Google Docs, Google Sheets, which is equivalent to Excel, or Google Slides, which is equivalent to PowerPoint, it doesn't count towards the 15 gigabyte storage. Also, if you send a student a PowerPoint, a document, or an Excel sheet, if they haven't got Microsoft Office, which in a lot of cases, why should they have, or a different version, they may not be able to access what you send them. But rather than sending them documents, PowerPoints, Excel sheets, if you just send them the link to what you've got on the Google Drive, there are no compatibility issues and they can access it with any device.
That's helped a lot, like mainstream things, because you've talked about with whatever electronics they're using that it may not access it, but it streamlines it to the fact that anyone can have access. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Well, and let's kind of talk about, we have a really skewed, I think most people have a really skewed idea of what learning or what school or teaching really looks like. Give us your philosophy of learning. Why do we do the flipped classroom versus, just teaching them?
Now, there is a phrase, teaching and learning, which I don't like, because teaching implies standing at the front delivering information, and learning implies learning facts. There's no need to learn a lot of facts now. They can be Googled. What the teaching and learning should be replaced by is, I feel, educating and understanding. And certainly in chemistry, the skill is in being able to apply those facts to answer questions. And this is where the flipped learning comes into its own, because the students have actually learned the content beforehand. The whole lesson can be spent productively where they are actually applying that knowledge, and you are there to help them. I tell my students they should not be doing anything in class that they can do outside of class. And also, I shouldn't be doing anything with them in class that a non-specialist could do or they could do on their own.
Yeah, that you're there to answer their questions, correct?
This is maximizing time.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about kind of before we started recording how questions drive learning, correct? A lot of people I don't think we understand that when we have questions, sometimes when those questions go unanswered, our learning wanes. But when we have questions that are getting answered, then our learning increases. Is that kind of how you see it?
Correct. In the conventional lesson, there isn't a lot of time for the students to ask questions because the teacher has so much work to get through. Whereas in the flipped learning, then the students have done the work beforehand. So the lesson is, in a conventional lesson, it's the teacher that asks the questions. They ask questions that they've previously researched the answers to. But that's not how it should be. It's the students that are learning, so they should be asking the questions. So in my lessons, it's the students that ask the questions and hopefully get the answers to the questions they want to know. And this also makes them more enthusiastic about the subject if they can get the answers to their questions, not just sit there and have somebody asking them questions that are possibly not relevant to them.
Yeah, that they don't really care about.
Yes.
Well, and I like that idea, because when you're teaching or when you're in a classroom, you're really working.
I'd say entertaining rather than.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to pull you up. Yes, I don't like the word teach. I like the word either to entertain, because only when you're entertaining is it fun, and students only learn when it's fun.
Yeah, but sometimes in that emotional drive, when there's anxiety or there's worry or there's frustration, or the learning stops. But when we can keep when we can keep it to a play level, their brains continue to absorb the information, correct?
Yes, if students don't learn, the key thing is the atmosphere. You've got to have a good relationship with the students, and you must have a relaxed atmosphere. And the current trend in education, with students always being assessed, having to meet targets, they are not relaxed, and their body language reflects on the students' learning.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you were talking about how they have to have the learning to be applicable. And that's what's the difference, I guess, was where I was going with my first thought, was the difference in your classroom is that their needs are being met, and they're allowing themselves to, basically your classroom's catering to their own individual needs, which allows it to have application, and then they increase their understanding.
Absolutely. Okay. If my students choose their own questions in class, because conventionally, if you set the same 10 questions for the students to do at home, the ones that are getting 10 out of 10 are wasting their valuable time doing work or questions that they can do. I tell my students in class to look through the questions and to try the ones that they can't do.
Well, and that's an interesting concept too, because, we're always wanting children to get the A, to be able to get 100% of it correct. But if we're getting 100% correct, then our mind isn't being challenged. And yeah, they may have the A, but that doesn't mean that, that they're being challenged and pushed to a higher level.
No, this is what I call maximizing their time. They should be working on the questions that they aren't happy about, they don't understand. It's often very different for different pupils. So all my 4 students could be working on different questions, because the questions that student A is working on, student B can answer those, so he's working on different questions.
Well, and the cool thing about that, we talk about how a lot of teachers don't feel like they can specifically meet students' needs, but if they use this flipped classroom philosophy, each child can be meeting their needs, even though it's the same subject matter, because some are being challenged farther than others that maybe can't do that. Awesome. So let's talk about, Jim and I have had some correspondence over the last couple of years, because he was actually one of my first people that I had on my podcast. But let's talk about, he's just told me all the different companies that have been using your methods or that you've been consulting with. Give us an idea of what those are. We talked about Twidgicate. Is that, I'm saying it right?
Yes. Twidgicate. Twidgicate, yes, that is, it's described as social networking for schools. So in schools, where some schools, because they are still worried about protecting students, protecting children, so they do not like the use of Gmail, which cannot be monitored. But by using Twidgicate, then that is accessible in schools. And again, it's fortunate in that the creator of that, Ray Blackney, he is a friend of mine. So if there are any problems with the site, then I can actually get an answer from him within an hour. And it is an excellent platform for flipped learning.
Well, and then one of the other sites that you've been working with, innovatemyschool.
So this is an online, well, they do online articles that I've been asked to write. And again, these are accessible to, to the whole world, essentially.
Yes.
And I have had comments that, yes, people are quite enthusiastic, very enthusiastic about this flipped learning. And in fact, the school in Cyprus that I trained 3 years ago, a teacher friend in Greece, he was doing a dissertation on independent learning, and his tutor in Scotland, Liz Larkin, she was one of the co-authors of the book that I was privileged to contribute to, and she actually asked him to get in touch with me as the expert on flipped learning, and for his dissertation he used the school in Cyprus that I trained, and the outcome of his dissertation was that yes, the flipped learning did improve independent learning, and the students were happier because they could work at their own pace. They felt they had more interaction with the staff.
Oh, that's neat.
So the results were as I expected, but it was nice to have them confirmed in this document.
Yeah, some real world studies from, stuff that we've talked about. I mean, you have evidence within your own classrooms, but this is like a whole setting of studies.
Yes.
I also noticed that one of the other links that you sent me was the Real World Education Group. You want to tell us about that one, of what you've done there?
Yes, well, I haven't done a lot really. It's fairly new, but the lady that set that up, I've been in contact with her for quite a few years, and what I want to do is what she wants me to do is to teach her about cloud computing.
And that's kind of what we were talking about with Google Docs and some of those things. Yeah. Okay.
To me, this is the future and this is the way to work.
Yeah.
Many people tend to fear Google and it's not secure, etc. But on the 6-7 years I've been using it, I've had no problem at all. And no, I am not paid by Google to say this.
That's awesome. Well, and you kind of talked about it before, but just reiterate, who has access to this information? I mean, that's one of the cool things when you're looking through Jim's guest book, you get a good view of who he's helping. Let's talk about that. I mean, you're not just in the UK helping those teachers, correct?
No, correct. I mean, a week ago, I stayed up to 11 because I was teaching a teacher in the USA about cloud computing. And then the following morning, I was doing the same to a teacher in Russia.
That's awesome. Well, and all over the world, basically. So
all over the world, essentially.
Yeah, that's neat. Before we go on, let's listen to this message. Recently, the Luminous Mind became an affiliate for EduSense, which offers tremendous discounts on educational supplies. I personally use EduSense to purchase our family supplies because of their great prices, responsive shipping times, and best of all, the chance to earn EduBucks, which I use towards future purchases. Who doesn't love a great deal within a deal? To get a 90% savings on your EduSense materials, go to theluminousmind.net and click on the sponsor page to find the affiliate link. Start using EduSense to illuminate your educational experience.
Take one step back and say there's a better way.
Welcome back to the Luminous Mind with expert teacher Jim Baker, who's entertaining others to better understanding. Well, we talked about this kind of before we started recording too, that when we, with Google Drive and some of these other mediums, companies have been using this type of document sharing and those types of things for quite a while. Why do you think things are kind of lagging in education? It seems like that's where students should be learning it, and then when they get out into the workforce, but they're almost kind of behind the mark.
Absolutely. A lot of the senior management in schools and people with the purse strings are not all that IT savvy in a lot of cases, and they are totally unaware of this cloud computing, and they are so tied up with meeting targets, putting things in place that will appease the inspectors that are coming in, and they don't have time to investigate all this technology.
Well, and they try to seem savvy, right? I mean, we talked about that too, that they get, iPads in the classroom and they get different things like that make it look like, we're moving technology forward. But what's been your experience with that?
Yes, I contributed to an article on LinkedIn the other day by somebody saying that a lot of thousands of pounds are wasted by schools bringing in things like iPads, smart boards, and they are not used.
Yeah, so
whereas
the training isn't there, right?
The training's not there, and in a lot of cases they're not needed. The way I work with my students with Google Drive and Google Docs, which is all free, is far better in my opinion.
Yeah, and it wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything, correct?
It's just free, it's completely free,
yeah.
The Google, and also there are no incompatibility issues, and well, I can't find any cons against it.
Well, and with all your experience in teaching, educating other people, and training others, how do you think our regular systems can be improved? What do you see? We kind of talked about it before of what you see in the future, but give us an idea of what you think that looks like, or what that could look like, I should say.
I mean, I feel it could look like the way I work with mine. In fact, on the real world education, the comment from the guy there that asked me to be a consultant was that I'm 10 years ahead of my time.
Exactly.
That was his comment. But I've offered to give free sessions to the school I'm at, but nobody's taken it up yet.
Well, in our last podcast, too, we kind of talked about how maybe one of the improvements would be to really have an emphasis on IT guys to make sure, everyone's trained well and the products are working well and people are understanding them. But that really is like the last. I mean, that guy comes in a couple times a week or something like that. It's not a high priority in most education.
No, I think the value that schools put on IT is reflected by the pay or the salary that IT technicians get compared to teachers.
That's very true. I mean, you can see that. So one of the things I think is so neat about Jim, like he said before, that, he's 10 years ahead of his time. How, as a seasoned teacher, I mean, most younger teachers don't even understand all these concepts. What are some habits that you've put into your life that have been really helpful in you to learn all these processes?
I'm fortunate. Well, my eldest son, he is an IT technician for a broadband company, and I've picked up quite a lot from him. But it just seems sensible to use this modern technology. And as I say, I'm a digital champion, which means on a Thursday morning, I run classes in my local village for anybody with problems with the computers, tablets or phones. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, I had a 93-year-old lady in who had just bought her first computer.
Oh, that's neat.
And she is now, a comment she made was, I said, you're really pleased with this, aren't you? She said, yes. She said, I think the housework's going to suffer now.
That's funny. Well, that's one of the things I really admire about Jim is that he's definitely more humble with, and maybe your philosophy of education is I don't know, byproduct of it, or if that's what drives it, but he's very humble in the fact that he knows that he's always got something more to learn or to try to understand, and that you don't ever see yourself as like, even though you're such a decorated teacher, you don't ever feel like you're done expanding your knowledge. Is that
you're never done? No,
you're a lifelong student yourself.
Absolutely. When I think that when I was young, we didn't have electricity in our village till I was about 9. When I see the advance in technology in my lifetime, it's incredible.
Yeah. And you've taken it to a whole new level. So that's the neat thing about it. So let's talk about maybe what some of your long-term goals are. One of the other neat things is when most teachers his age are retired, Jim continues to help others and to teach and to mentor, to teach to even teachers how to use these resources. Now let's talk about where you're hoping to go with that.
Well, obviously to try and expand or to make more and more people aware of this, because as you can see from the guest book, people that I have trained on this are really pleased and see the benefits. I just wish people back home would be as enthusiastic as people abroad.
Yeah. Well, and that's really the neat thing about it is that this expanded world that we have has allowed you to help people way outside of your sphere, maybe driving, that desire to, like you said at the beginning, you felt like you have so much more to give.
Exactly. I've got a mission, as I put on my Twidgicate page, is that I've got a passion for repairing the nonsense that many call education.
That's awesome. Well, and he's been in the system long enough that he knows what that nonsense is like, and so trying to help improve that. Before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting advice for our listeners? And then give us your contact information. I'm definitely going to link a bunch up, but tell us how people can get in touch with you if they want to learn more.
They can just email me, or even on the site, there's an email address there, which is mail@jimbakersonlinelearning.co.uk.
Okay, and do you have any final advice or words that you want to say to people?
Now, I am fortunate in that I can say and do things that other teachers possibly cannot because of the rules of the school. But I just wish that teachers had more time to experiment with what I'm doing now.
And maybe that is, it's kind of a lack of time that's allowing that to happen, that learning to happen. But
because they have to spend so much time on tasks just to tick boxes rather than what is good for the education of the students.
Yeah, to appease the higher up, correct?
Yes.
People that haven't even necessarily been in the classroom. So
with being a chemist, I often relate schools to chemical factories where students are the byproducts.
Yeah, sad in some ways. Well, okay, so on Jim's website, which is jimbakers.onlinelearning.cu.uk, there's all kinds of great videos and different things like that. There's also a guest book, a page that you can sign. He also has a LinkedIn profile and an email. However, we're going to be sure to link all that information that we've discussed today on our website as well. But thank you so much, Jim, for joining us and helping to light our minds on fire. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for listening to an old guy.
You could teach me some things. You're definitely not an old guy. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Jim Baker, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us. Leave us a review. Share our content. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.